Hey y'all, hope you're doing well today. So can you believe it's already almost 2 o'clock and I haven't had a coffee today? So I'm trying to recreate whatever magic it was that I did last summer. I felt great. I started walking in the mornings, and I started my day off with water only. I didn't have anything to eat or drink other than water before I went walking in the mornings, and I felt great. I felt great all summer. I had this routine of taking a certain combination of vitamins, and it's just incredible. And while we're on the topic, I'll go ahead and share with you, for years I took this very popular multivitamin and I felt awful, and I shouldn't have any energy, and I just, when you feel like that consistently, it's kind of like you just think, well, it must be me. But one day I decided just to randomly try changing my multivitamin, and before I could find one I liked, I just kind of stopped taking that one, and I started feeling better, and I realized that was the reason. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Might be something to look into. And then now I feel better if I do take my vitamins, but it's different. It's my own combination, and maybe I'll share that with you sometime, what makes me feel really good. But in today's message I want to share with you some bits and pieces out of Emerson's book, Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's the one I've shared with you all before, where it's just a collection of his essays, and it's just really interesting to read. And what's really cool, this right here, today I can share with you all like a little mini testimony of how the divine works, right, in mysterious ways. And that is, I need more room here in my Jeep. I'm trying to get all my books and my notepad all ready. What was really cool is I had this topic on my mind. It just came to me. I remembered a conversation I had actually with a coach that I worked with. I had a couple of phone calls with her, and she was very helpful. And that's another thing. I want to share with you all some specific YouTube channels and resources and coaches and different things that I have personally worked with, or that have really impacted me, like if it was a channel that I've watched. And I just want to share with you all some of those resources in case it may be beneficial to you as well. But the conversation I had with this lady was on the topic of self-betrayal, and the way she, again, perspective, it's all about perspective. The way she mentioned it in our conversation just resonated with me in such a way that it was like it made things click that had not necessarily really clicked in my mind prior to her using the term self-betrayal. And so that's the kind of thing that I've learned for myself, and that's why it's so important to me to try and position concepts in many different ways for you all, because I know sometimes that's all it takes for something really important to click within your mind, and therefore it's usable. You know what I mean? It's like you can obtain all this wisdom, like that Bible verse that I love, right? Wisdom is the principal thing, but with all you're getting, get understanding. So understanding is a different part. It's like step 2 after you get the wisdom. And so, like I said, it's not going to do you any good just to get all this wisdom and it's just sitting in there, but it hasn't clicked with your cognition in a way that's usable, that you can now apply in your life. That's the important part. So that's just my motivation for wanting to share so many different angles with you. And I wanted to open the discussion today by mentioning, the topic of narcissism gave me a lot of answers at a time in my life when I needed answers. And so I'm very grateful that there are channels that are dedicated to that topic, and I know I've talked about it a lot on my channel, but I really want to focus my channel on personal growth, and a lot of times that happens for many of us after we come out of a bad situation. You know what I mean? So it's like yeah, we need to kind of reflect sometimes on, our past and the different things we've experienced that were hard or challenging, just so that we can sharpen and refine our discernment. That's important, but I think it's good to focus on just ourselves, right? And learning ourselves more and more. And yes, we can, I feel like, learn more about ourselves, even looking at humanity in general, the human mind and reality and all that stuff too. But, I'm not an expert. And if you're new to my channel, I wanted to say that because if you're not new, then you know that I say this a lot. But I'm certainly not an expert, okay? I truly do consider life like one big class, and I'm just a student. And the thing is, I feel like a lot of times we don't think that we have anything valuable to share, but we do. And so I just want to encourage you, if you have any kind of feeling like, you want to share your thoughts with the world, I just encourage you to do that, to find an avenue for that, whether it's writing a book or even like a blog online. Or even just a social media page or a YouTube channel, whatever it is. I just encourage you to not keep all of your thoughts inside, because they may help others, as you're learning and growing yourself. So I just want to encourage you. I was encouraged, to put my thoughts out there, and I think that's great. A lot of coaches do that, and so I wanted to pass that on to you all too. Okay, so I have this t-shirt, this old t-shirt I've had for years, and I saw it the other day, and it says, "Mind your own biscuits and life will be gravy." Yes, because here in the South we love biscuits, right? So mind your own biscuits and life will be gravy. And like I said, I do think it's important to learn your environment, right? Because the world we live in is like our environment, right? And so all the elements, all of this, learning about that is important and crucial for our safety, right? But if we can change our approach to this into a lesson, then we can turn and focus on refining ourselves, right? So in thinking about the concept of self-betrayal, I thought this was really interesting. This was like just a moment that clicked for me, right? I'm thinking that, when you have this feeling of being lonely, and it's not being alone, because you can be alone and be totally content. Which that was something that was discussed. I'm reminded of Kevin from the Royal We. He has a little community that you can be a part of, and they have discussions on the regular, like all throughout the week. And that was something that was discussed one time in that group, and it was very helpful to me too. But yeah, how interesting if you think about it. You can be alone and be totally content, and yet you can be with someone and feel like the most lonely ever, right? So it's not about being with someone. There's this loneliness. And what clicked with me was understanding that there was this disconnect from myself, my true self, my higher self, my spiritual self that's connected with the divine, whatever you want to call it. But there's this disconnect. And so, which again, I can't help but to want to tie in the hero's journey, because that's a big part of what that's about, right? The part of you that is your inner guiding light, which is, or can be viewed as, like a divine spark, a part of God within you, the Holy Spirit, right? Which is, in the Bible, it says, that's what we are to look to lead and guide and direct us, right? So, and it also further explains that we are not to think about tomorrow. You know what I mean? And so, but how many of us really do that? I mean, we try, all of us, just as a part of just it's so natural in this modern day and age, at least in this modern society and our culture, to just think it's honorable and good to be in control of our life, to the point that we're scheduling everything, and we have everything planned out, and then we're shocked and totally just thrown off when things don't go our way, when there's some kind of, wrench thrown into the mix, and it's like, now what do I do? And so, it's a good time to pause and remember Bible verses like that tell you not to give any thought, for the future, really, that God will take care of that. Each day will take care of itself, and that God will provide. And so, yes, and so if you look at that through the lens of understanding that if you truly are connected and aligned with that inner guidance, then you're going to know what to do every moment. And so there's no planning needed. It's a heavy thing to think about. And I just encourage you, again, my goal is always to get the wheels turning for you. Okay, not just to give you the answers. That's for you to find, right, for yourself. But if I can get the wheels turning and get you started, thinking about some things that might wind up producing something fruitful for you in your mind and in your life, then I've done my job. And so, yeah, so I was just self-betrayal as the basis of feeling lonely just made total sense to me. And it's like, that's going to be a big theme, by the way, in all the different portions of what I'm going to share with you today out of this book. So just keep that in mind. And so, of course, I was thinking about, what do I call this video? What do I name it? What's the title? How should I label this topic? Because a lot of times my videos include a lot of different things, so it's like, how do you refine that down to one label or one title? It's kind of tough, But of course, I'm always wanting to look at things from the positive. So I was like, okay, let me take the topic of self-betrayal, because that's what was put on my heart to begin with. And then the cool thing that I think I got sidetracked about and forgot to tell you, I was reminded of that conversation I had with that coach, and she was talking about self-betrayal, and I was already thinking about making my video about that. And then I pick up this book, and I'm like, I just wonder if there's something in here that, I could just read a little portion. And I flipped right to this part that is all about that. It's all about that. And so, see how the divine works? It's beautiful. It's mysterious and beautiful. And it's this higher wisdom beyond our limited human minds, beyond our comprehension, which should be comforting, really, to us. But so to flip, if you might just consider, like, flip the coin on the other side, on the concept of self-betrayal, and look at the positive, we might say, what would that be? It would be self-trust and self-commitment, right? So the essay that I'm going to read from out of this book, because it is just a collection of essays from Emerson, is called Self-Reliance. Self-reliance. And I just want us to read these portions together, and hopefully, like I said, get something out of it. So as we read, just some concepts to keep in mind. The first one would be conformity. Number 2 would be non-resistance and societal expectations, and specifically with regard to different things. Like, one example would be consistency. Just really new lenses to try on. It was for me when I was reading this. Self-trust, and also towards the end of what we're going to share today, what we're going to read and review is expanded thinking, again, which we talk about a lot on this channel, or zoomed out perspective. So I hope that you'll join me for the message. I hope you enjoy it. And again, I just hope you're having a great day so far. Okay, so the section I'm going to start sharing from is he's talking about what he calls the healthy attitude of human nature, and he's illustrating this through the lens of children. Okay, so he says, a boy is in the parlor what the pit is in the playhouse, independent, irresponsible, looking out from his corner on such people and facts as pass by. He tries and sentences them on their merits in the swift, summary way of boys, as good, bad, interesting, silly, eloquent, troublesome. He cumbers himself never about consequences, about interests. He gives an independent, genuine verdict. You must court him, he does not court you. But the man is, as it were, clapped into jail by his consciousness. This is where you can relate this to the fruit from the tree in the Garden of Eden, right? Knowing the difference between the knowledge of good and evil, right? And they were forbidden to eat from it. So this is where, and then again we have the verse in the Bible that talks about you must become as little children again to enter the kingdom of God, right? Or heaven. I forget exactly how it's phrased, but you see my point. So this is kind of like similar to that, right? So because as adults we think we have it all figured out, you know what I mean, versus the innocence of children. So yes, so as far as kids, he says he cumbers himself never about consequences, about interests. He gives an independent, genuine verdict. You must court him, he does not court you. But the man is, as it were, clapped into jail by his consciousness. As soon as he has once acted or spoken with, I don't know how to say this, it's E with a little hyphen, CLAT, he is a committed person, watched by the sympathy or the hatred of hundreds whose affections must now enter into his account. I feel like even with a word, a lot of this is fanciful terminology, and some of it's outdated, and even the scenarios that are referenced here for analogy and metaphorical purposes are outdated, but we can still get the gist of it, the message through the context. So how interesting. And that's how this whole book is. You can just read a small portion and it just packs a punch, to me. Just gives you so much to think about. Yeah. So it's like, as an adult, you have to consider opinion, public opinion, and how's this going to seem to the rest of society, or our family, my family, or this group or community that I'm a part of. Is this going to be acceptable? It's kind of like we're persuaded, you know what I mean, by these outside influences, and children aren't. So it says, yes. All right. Watched by the sympathy or the hatred of hundreds whose affections must now enter into his account. There is no lethe, L-E-T-H-E, for this. That he could pass again into his neutrality. Like, what a relief if we could just be kids again. You know what I mean? Who can thus avoid all pledges, and having observe again from the same unaffected, unbiased, unbribable, unaffrighted innocence, which must always be formidable, right? So it's like, once you know, when you're not innocent anymore, and you understand accountability and responsibility, even to the expectations of your society, you can't unknow that. You know what I mean? So, yes, you can't go back, right? It says he would utter opinions on all passing affairs, which being seen to be not private but necessary, would sink like darts into the ear of men and put them in fear, right? Because people wouldn't know how to handle it. And that's, if you think about a strong person who doesn't care, they're just totally unapologetically themselves, without regard to rejection from others and things like that. It's just, I'm giving you some things to think on. Okay, so yeah, so these are the these are the voices which we hear in solitude, right? We're away from all this outside influence. But they grow faint and inaudible as we enter into the world. So here we're seeing how that disconnect happens inside of us from our true self, our higher self, our inner guiding light, how it gets drowned out, muddled, how we find ourselves, just straddling the line here and sitting on the fence, however you want to position this. So many different analogies of, I know what feels right to me, per my inner guidance, versus I know what's expected of me. So it's a struggle, yes. So the voices. These are the voices which we hear in solitude, but that grow faint and inaudible as we enter into the world. Society everywhere is in conspiracy against the manhood of every one of its members. Society is a joint stock company in which the members agree, for the better securing of his bread to each shareholder, to surrender the liberty and culture of the eater. The virtue in most request is conformity. Self-reliance is its aversion. It loves not realities and creators, but names and customs. Whoso would be a man must be a nonconformist. He who would gather immortal palms must not be hindered by the name of goodness, but must explore if it be goodness. Nothing is at last sacred but the integrity of your own mind. Absolve you to yourself, and you shall have the suffrage of the world. That's the irony, It's like you feel like you're going to be rejected if you go against the grain out there in the world, right? When it's not, things aren't right, but yet when you do go against the grain, stand up for what's true, now you get respect. And you know why? Because people know what's right. Deep down, people know. And I feel like a lot of times there are just, it feels like it starts with just a minority of people who have very selfish motives to gain profit or whatever it is that persuade and manipulate and people through propaganda and pressure and all this other stuff, and then this just spreads like a plague. And so it requires strength to live totally aligned with what you know is right. And so here it's kind of like I can't imagine even contemplating these concepts without using the lens of spirituality, because it's just hand in hand, right? So I thought this was really interesting reading. So I'm gonna skip a good bit because there's a lot. And so let's start with this next part here. It says, "My life is for itself and not for a spectacle. I much prefer that it should be of a lower strain, so it be genuine and equal, than that it should be glittering and unsteady. I wish it to be sound and sweet, and not to need diet and bleeding." Again, this is from a different era, right? Lots of different customs. "I ask primary evidence that you are a man, and refuse this appeal from the man to his actions. I know that for myself it makes no difference whether I do or forbear those actions which are reckoned excellent. I cannot consent to pay for a privilege where I have intrinsic right." Wow, it's like play that again. That's just a impactful statement right there. I cannot consent to pay for a privilege where I have intrinsic right. Yeah, exactly. "Few and mean as my gifts may be, I actually am, and do not need for my own assurance or the assurance of my fellows any secondary testimony." Right? That's where, anytime we were talking recently, I think it was my last video about needs. When you have needs, you really got to be conscious of them and take care of it yourself, because if you don't, there's going to be somebody out there that's going to want to take that seat of power in your life and exploit your needs. So here he's talking about validation. He's like, I don't need this outside validation. I can do that for myself. So just powerful, all right. He doesn't need the assurance of his fellows, any secondary testimony. "What I must do is all that concerns me, not what the people think. This rule, equally arduous in actual and in intellectual life, may serve for the whole distinction between greatness and meanness. It is the harder because you will always find those who think they know what is your duty better than you know it. Yep. It is easy in the world to live after the world's opinion. It is easy in solitude to live after our own. But the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. Yes, that lone, confident, he's calling a man, right? Confident person who knows what's what, and they are securely tethered to that inner guiding light, that Holy Spirit inside, right? It's not going to be swayed. We talk about that kind of stuff all the time. I was so glad to find all this right here. So, yeah, the objection to conforming to usages that have become dead to you is that it scatters your force. It loses your time and blurs the impression of your character. We can directly correlate this with in the Bible where it talks about putting off the old man, or philosophically dying to self, or talking about psychology and ego death, where you are renewed. Again, you're a new person. You're made new through Christianity and Christ. So you're putting off the old ways, right? Even Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead, right? Symbolically, spiritually. And so I feel like that's very in alignment with what we just read here. The objection to conforming to usages that have become dead to you is that it scatters your force. So anytime we conform to anything that is from, the old life, the old ways of the old man that we put off, then we're just, like he says, we're scattering our force. We have this life force inside of us and we're plundering it. We're just wasting it on the wrong things. And so again, that's why, it's important to understand, to look back and evaluate the things you've been through, to refine your discernment, to keep yourself safe going forward and your family safe going forward. It's very important. But I'm all about putting the majority of your focus on the new and the good and the positive, because you are now a new person in this awareness, on this new level of consciousness. So our force, our life force, is our biggest pearl, and not something to just play around with, right? Otherwise, it's scattered. We lose our time, and also, he says it blurs the impression of our character. Yeah, like if you keep hanging out with people that are, from your old life, before you came into the awareness that you did and had conviction in your heart to make you change. If you keep hanging out with people who haven't repented or changed their ways, they're going to keep you in the mud. I think it's Rosenberg. He's got a great channel. He talks about being stuck in the mud a lot. So, yeah. Okay. So, found my place here. It says, if you maintain a dead church, contribute to a dead Bible society, vote with a great party, either for the government or against it, spread your table like base housekeepers. Under all these screens, I have difficulty to detect the precise man you are. Right? It's like, how can you be expected for others to see you, who you truly are and your true character, if you're hanging out with people who don't have integrity? It's going to make you look like you're the same, right? So, exactly. Yeah. I have difficulty to detect the precise man you are, and of course, so much force is withdrawn from your proper life. But do your work, and I shall know you. Do your work, and you shall reinforce yourself. A man must consider what a blind man's buff is, this game of conformity. just thought that was super powerful. So I'm going to go ahead and continue on. It says, I've skipped a little bit here. Do I not know that he has pledged? Well, let me give you a little context here. So now he's referencing, I think it's a preacher. Yeah, right? So he's referencing a preacher here. Do I not know that he has pledged to himself not to look but at one side, the permitted side, not as a man but as a parish minister? He's talking about being politically motivated, you know, essentially. He is a retained attorney, and these heirs of the bench are the emptiest of affectation. Well, most men have bound their eyes with one or another handkerchief and attached themselves to some one of these communities of opinion. This conformity makes them not false in a few particulars, authors of a few lies, but false in all particulars. Their every truth is not quite true. Their two is not the real two, therefore not the real four, so that every word they say chagrins us, and we know not where to begin to set them right. Have you ever been in a situation like this, where you're listening to somebody and they're basically BSing you or the room or the group of people they're talking to, and you know it, and everybody kind of knows it, but they're just entertaining it and just, you know, putting on friendly faces and stuff, and it's like you're thinking this whole thing is just wrong. It's just such a big gobbled mess. And so it's I thought that was such an interesting, he can really just paint the scenario in your mind with his words. I feel like he's like yeah, so that every word they say, I think I'm saying this word right, chagrins us, and we know not where to begin to set them right. It's like, where do you even start? Meantime, nature is not slow to equip us in the prison uniform of the party to which we adhere. We come to wear one cut of face and figure, and acquire by degrees the gentlest asinine expression. There is a mortifying experience in particular, which does not fail to wreak itself also in the general history. I mean the foolish face of praise, the forced smile, which we put on in company where we do not feel at ease. Here we're starting to understand, we're getting this visual of self-betrayal. You ever caught yourself like thinking, I just don't belong here, man. I just don't, this is just, I know I'm supposed to be part of this family, or I know I'm supposed to be part of this social group, or whatever it is, but I just don't belong here. But you go along with it anyway. It's self-betrayal, right? Don't feel good. So, you know, it's like what I should do, right? It's the living by the shoulds, you know, those expectations, external expectations. Yeah, we don't need to adopt those, right? The forced smile which we put on in company where we do not feel at ease, in answer to conversation which does not interest us. The muscles not spontaneously moved, but moved by a low, usurping willfulness, grow tight about the outline of the face with the most disagreeable sensation. Yes, yes. You ever looked at people and thought they totally seem like robots, and they get mad if you deviate from that, like you're supposed to be a robot too, but it's like killing your soul inside? That's what I was reminded of in reading his description of the musculature of the face when you're trying to force yourself to fit into something that's so wrong, you know? So entertaining. For nonconformity, the world whips you with its displeasure, and therefore a man must know how to estimate a sour face. The bystanders look askance on him in the public street or in the friend's parlor. If this aversion had its origin in contempt and resistance like his own, he might well go home with a sad countenance. But the sour faces of the multitude, like their sweet faces, have no deep cause, but are put on and off as the wind blows and a newspaper directs. So here, even back in the, gosh, when was this thing written? A long time ago. I mean, this particular copy is even newer than the original. I think this is like from the late 1800s and stuff. I don't know, I could be totally off. This is old stuff. My point is, even if you read, you know, the Bible, you see it everywhere. The fig leaves, the people who are wearing the masks and expect you to do it too, and they get mad when you don't, you know, and your life can be in danger when you don't go along with it, right? That's why I've always viewed Jesus as a rebel. Can you tell my caffeine pills have kicked in now? Y'all know I love Walgreens, so be careful with this. If you ever take this, I always just break my tablets in half and then quarter them even further than that, just to be careful, because I'm very sensitive to caffeine. So, but I think I'm awake now. So anyway, yeah, I thought that was crazy, right? All right, so how much more do I have? So let me, the next section, I've skipped a little bit. It says the other terror that scares us from self-trust. Again, here we have fear. Here we have the concept of fear, right? Reminds me of Donnie Darko, where the only two concepts with regards to the overarching theme of how we approach this reality is love or fear, right? The other terror that scares us from self-trust is our consistency. This is interesting. A different lens to view this term. It was for me. A reverence for our past act or word, because the eyes of others have no other data for computing our orbit than our past acts, and we are loath to disappoint them. He's talking about entrapment by the old man, but you know, our things of the past, and how it's, you know, it's kind of like when you learn and grow because you want to, and you change and you mature, but your friends don't. They're going to despise you for that. And so there's actually motivation to not learn and grow. There's motivation for people to remain stuck, vibrating low, you know, in negativity and in a victim mentality or whatever it is that's not really serving them well or anybody else. There's motivation for people to get stuck there, because you're going to be viewed as uncool or whatever, you know. It's kind of like when you're in school and you want to make good grades. A lot of times you're looked at, you know, in a negative light. That's how it was back in the day when I went to school anyway. I don't know, maybe things have changed since they've implemented all these anti-bullying campaigns and stuff in school, which is great. But yeah, exactly. So, right. The other terror that scares us from self-trust is our consistency, a reverence for the past act or word, because the eyes of others have no other data for computing our orbit than our past acts, and we are loath to disappoint them. But why should you keep your head over your shoulder? You're not going that way. You've heard that old saying, you know, don't look backwards, you're not going that way. It's kind of like that. Why drag about this corpse of your memory, lest you contradict somewhat you have stated in this or that public place? Suppose you should contradict yourself. What then? It seems to be a rule of wisdom never to rely on your memory alone, scarcely even in acts of pure memory, but to bring the past for judgment into the thousand-eyed present and live ever in a new day. In your metaphysics, you have denied personality to the deity. Yet, when the devout motions of the soul come, yield to them heart and life, though they should clothe God with shape and color. Leave your theory as Joseph his coat in the hand of the harlot and flee. A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds, adored by little statesmen and philosophers and divines. With consistency, a great soul has simply nothing to do. He may as well concern himself with his shadow on the wall. Speak what you think now in hard words, and tomorrow speak what tomorrow thinks in hard words again, though it contradict everything you say today. Ah, so you shall be sure to be misunderstood? Is it so bad then to be misunderstood? And then he lists some people here. Pythagoras, was misunderstood, and Socrates and Jesus and Luther and Copernicus and Galileo and Newton, and every pure and wise spirit that ever took flesh. To be great is to be misunderstood. So I thought that was really interesting. And then the last section I'm going to read to you is kind of short. It says, we pass for what we are. Character teaches above our wills. It's not what you say, it's what you do, right? Men imagine that they communicate their virtue or vice only by overt actions, and do not see that virtue or vice emit a breath every moment. That's why it's important to always observe people, to make your own judgment as to their character, you know, if you want to associate with them or not. There will be an agreement in whatever variety of actions, so they be each honest and natural in their hour. For of one will, the actions will be harmonious, however unlike they seem. Does that make sense? I had to read this one twice earlier. For of one will, in other words, there's this underlying set of paradigms and beliefs, a belief structure that a person's operating from, but you're only going to see bits and pieces of it manifest in their actions and words. So that's why you have to. Let me just share this with you. I had this thought the other day, and I didn't plan on tying this in, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it now. A realization I had, for real, was that you don't really know a person, not just until they work with you, but until they work for you. I'm serious, y'all. I joke, and this, I hope this don't come off arrogant, but I'm just gonna be honest with you. I joke about how teaching art to elementary school students prepared me to be a manager, because it's shocking to you to hire people that you've known a long time and then see them in a very different light when they're coming to you as the manager at their job. It's in other words, do you really ever know a person? And you know, the best we can do is to see, to observe a person in different circumstances, different situations, and to have that awareness of, you know, where are these actions coming from, you know, because it's going to be indicative of what he's calling one will, you know, under the surface that you can't see. So even though everything looks disjointed and not equal, it really does paint a picture of the person's true character, but you just have to connect the dots. You see what I'm saying? I thought this was really interesting. So, for of one will, well, let me back up. There will be an agreement in whatever variety of actions, so they be each honest and natural in their hour. This is why you can't hide who you are. If you're a person who's trying to live a secret life and live behind a cloak of lies and deceit and a fake mask, you can think that you're doing a great job, but there's always going to be aspects that people can see and identify that say that's not, you know, your actions are not aligning with your words. It's that overt part you feel secure in, right? If you're a deceptive person, that you're going to have a hard awakening when you realize, you know, again, we all have unconscious behaviors. I mentioned this recently. We all have an unconscious part of our psyche, and we all act from it unconsciously. So that's where the darkness does come to the light, and, you know, in different circumstances and at different points, you know, unintentionally, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And like I said before, I truly think this is a big part of why God designed us this way, you know. There's that old saying, 3 things can't be long hid: the sun, the moon, and the truth. So yeah. So there will be an agreement in whatever variety of actions, so they be each honest and natural in their hour. For of one will, the actions will be harmonious, however unlike they seem. These varieties are lost sight of at a little distance. At a little height of thought, one tendency unites them all. The voyage of the best ship is a zigzag line of 100 tacks. See the line from a sufficient distance. Here we're talking about zooming out, expanding your thinking, expanding your mind to see the bigger picture, okay? See the line from a sufficient distance, and it straightens itself to the average tendency. Your genuine action will explain itself and will explain your other genuine actions. Your conformity explains nothing. This is why it's so obvious a person who is living a false life can go through all the motions, trying to conform to what they think is going to make up a great facade, right, of a character that doesn't exist, integrity that's not there, but people can see through it. So I had to share that with you, and it's very enlightening when I read these. Anytime I read Emerson, it's always enlightening, and it's almost like when you're trying to learn and grow about yourself, you can't isolate that just to yourself. It's like you can't help but to just understand more about humanity in general, and so there's always going to be bits and pieces that are just aha moments with regards to people you've been entangled with in the past, and people in your present, and yourself and your family and your particular current social group and your culture and things like that. But in the end, I just hope that this all comes together for us, and that we can just put one foot in front of the other and just try to learn and grow every day and make the most of every day. So thanks so much for coming along today for the message. I hope that it got the wheels turning for you. I hope that you found it valuable. I thank you for coming along to listen, and I hope that you have a beautiful day, and I'll see you again very soon.